Okay, first of all, I just started filming this video and my texts were blowing up with things. COVID-19 from work. But that is why I'm filming this video, is to get away from that. So I asked you over on my Instagram, should we do a COVID related, maybe anxiety video, or should we do a more light and fluffy video? And people voted for light and fluffy, the majority. And so today I'm going to talk about oversharing, because that's just straight up light and fluffy. And so oversharing specifically in new relationships such as romantic, friend, and workplace. This is a topic that I really started digging into this past week when I heard a podcast about it. The podcast is called Help Me Be Me, and the episode, I'll link it down below. So it really piqued my interest to kind of explore what I overshare, which I am totally an oversharer, admittedly. So we're going to answer 3 questions in this video, followed by tips for mitigating your oversharing tendencies. So number 1, why do we overshare? Number 2, is oversharing always bad? And number 3, what is the difference between conscious and unconscious oversharing? So first of all, I want to mention that of course there is a thing as healthy self-disclosure, and you need that for all relationships. This is not the healthy, this is like you've shared too much for where you're at in a certain relationship or situation. You can define for yourself what is oversharing versus healthy self-disclosure. And I'm obviously not saying you should never share anything about yourself. That would also stunt relationship growth. Question 1, why do we overshare? Okay, there are so many reasons, and we overshare both consciously and unconsciously. I'll run through some of these reasons quickly. 1 is feeling lonely, and you feel like if you put something out there about yourself, you'll get something in return. A need to connect with others. And as a social tool. So as a social tool, I'm going to break that down a little more and even talk about it from my own perspective. Admittedly, I am an oversharer, and it's a lot for as a social tool, and because I'm trying to have people form a certain impression about me. You feel like if you share something, then you automatically have a deeper relationship. That might not always be the case, because the other person might not know what to do with that information. I am the friend with the stories. I am the storyteller. You could call me the drama gal, because I can make a really small thing into a really good story, which can be good and bad, I think. I want people to form a certain impression of me, and so some that I have listed are, she's quirky, some sort of shock value response, like wow, garnering sympathy, having people think I'm complex or a complicated individual, that I'm interesting, funny, open, good storyteller. I may want shares back, so I want reciprocal sharing, like I'm trying to get information out of someone else. That's quite manipulative, yes. And to entertain or keep the energy flowing, like in a group setting, I feel like I'm always a person kind of talking and oversharing, but we'll get into the fact that that is actually unconscious for me. For some of us, oversharing is a straight up habit, and so you can totally unform habits, which is the good thing. Question 2, is oversharing always bad? Yes, if, and no if. So yes, if it leaves you feeling compromised or exposed, which is the language that Sarah uses in the podcast I'm referring to. It's not necessarily bad. But it depends how you feel afterwards. If you feel compromised, exposed, or you just feel kind of icky after sharing it, like I probably shouldn't have shared that, then it probably means that you should decrease or at least examine your overshares. But it's not always bad if your oversharing is conscious, you're doing it for a specific reason and you know why, and you've made a decision on it. Like your body or mind didn't just take over and start doing it itself. Question 3, what is the difference between unconscious and conscious oversharing? Well, unconscious oversharing may look like, and this is words from Sarah from the podcast, dissociation light. So essentially you're in a conversation, like maybe you're out to dinner, and your body and your mind your mouth just starts talking, and you're like, okay, well now I'm saying this, okay, well I guess I'm saying this now. And you're like watching yourself do it. That is what she calls dissociation light, which I really like. The other side of that is it happened and you didn't even realize it was really happening, so you weren't able to stop yourself. You realized it after the fact, and then you start feeling really uncomfortable and you start second guessing everything. So then you get really anxious about what you just shared. So on the other hand, conscious oversharing can be a really good thing, and I'll give some examples of that. So it may look like you're trying to, for example, reduce the stigma of something, so you're going to talk about it more. For example, with this channel, people may consider this channel an overshare about my mental health, but really I'm doing certain work that I've decided I want to do and that needs to be done, and I'm serving a certain self-defined purpose by doing this and by having this channel, and so therefore it is conscious. Similarly, you may be oversharing to try to normalize certain things, like maybe body hair. Like you talk about, I don't shave. You might say that, and people might think, oh, that's an overshare, but maybe it was a conscious overshare on your part because you want to normalize that. How I'm trying to rationalize the difference between between the two, or differentiate the two, is conscious is like you have a mission, you're doing it on purpose, and what you're oversharing is set to serve the mission, whereas unconscious is like, whoops, well, that happened. And also it's subconscious as well as unconscious. It's subconscious because you don't realize you're trying to make people form a certain impression of you, but you are. So tips for mitigating your oversharing. Okay, so I've kind of come up with a list of questions that you can run through in your mind. So the first one is, ultimately, what purpose are you serving with this overshare? If you are trying, so define it. So if you're oversharing to have someone form a certain impression of you, it's probably not your best bet. If you are oversharing because you're trying to normalize or reduce stigma around something, it's probably okay to overshare it if you feel comfortable with that. Here's another question I have. Do you want to say that yet in the relationship? And so that is based, that's a big decision, just because it's based on so many different things, like who the person is, how long you've known them, what your past conversations have looked like, where you want this relationship to go. Like all of those things really factor into, should I say that yet? Also, is it appropriate for this relationship? So like, is it a work relationship? So like, I shouldn't really share that. Just an example. And then if you find yourself oversharing, and this is a tip from Sarah from the podcast, remove yourself temporarily so you can come back to your body. So like for her, that looked like going to the bathroom like during a dinner like several times, just so she could like regroup. She also would read a note on her phone, and just generally distancing yourself so you can just take a breather. You also may know, if you follow me on Instagram, that I do not like journaling in general. Because if I say, oh, I'm gonna journal, I don't know what I'm journaling on. It's so open-ended that I'm like, okay, well, there's either so much or there's nothing to talk about. But I found that if I get interested in a self-exploration topic and I want to explore that more, I create myself a journal prompt. And so creating a journal prompt is like, you have a specific topic and you just like answer that. And that is a really much better way for me personally to journal, because it doesn't feel so open-ended. So here's a question example that maybe you could use as a journal prompt. What do I feel I overshare about? Or you could do something like, in the past, when have I felt badly about sharing something and why? And so that can just kind of get you thinking about if you're an oversharer. Similarly, if you're an undersharer, like any of those things. So thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry I had to whip through this video. I hope that I didn't talk too fast. If I did, just go back and watch it, but on like 0.5 speed, and like that should do it. Okay, connect with me over on Instagram. I post pretty much daily. And then, of course, I do Mental Health Mondays. And so that's when I promote my newest YouTube video on Instagram. However, if you are subscribed to me on YouTube, you get the video a day early on Sundays. So that's just some incentive. So go journal, go decide what you want to self-disclose on, and I'll see you next week.